There is gigantic news in the Linux world every 6 months, because every 6 months we get a new release of Ubuntu, the most popular Linux desktop operating system on the planet. Just yesterday, Ubuntu 18.10 Cosmic Cuttlefish was released. Let's take a look. So, Ubuntu 18.10 Cosmic Cuttlefish released just yesterday. I'm taking a look at it one day after the release announcement. Normally, I like to take a look at these on the day or maybe a day before. You know, the big Ubuntu releases. I was out of state, though, yesterday when this was released, so I'm about one day late taking a look at it from when I normally take a look at these things. Over at Ubuntu.com, we have a blurb at the top of the main page. Ubuntu 18.10 is here, the latest version of the world's most widely used Linux platform for Kubernetes, multi-cloud, machine learning. Of course, the Ubuntu release notes are usually focused heavily on server, cloud, that sort of thing, because that is where Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu, makes all their money, although they do give us these very nice desktop editions of their operating system, which, again, is insanely popular. There are no good metrics, as far as how many Ubuntu desktop users are out there. You can assume it's probably tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions, who knows? We're really not sure. And there's no hard metrics. I mentioned that Ubuntu is the most popular Linux desktop operating system. There are no hard numbers to back that up, but I think most people with some sense that have been around Linux long enough know that Ubuntu is probably by far the most popular Linux desktop operating system on the planet. I think that's a safe statement. Over at distrowatch.com, of course, we got the release announcement yesterday. Adam Conrad announced the release of Ubuntu 18.10, which will receive 9 months of security updates and support. So this is very important for those of you that are Ubuntu users or thinking about using Ubuntu. So Ubuntu ships a new release every 6 months, but the release that happens every 2 years in April, on the even years in April, that is their LTS releases, their long-term support releases. The LTS release gets support for 5 years. If you choose to run the LTS release that long, most people just run it 2 years, and then when the next LTS comes out, they upgrade to that LTS, and then 2 years after that, they upgrade to that LTS. If you run these interim releases, which are the 3 releases in between the LTSs, you only get 9 months of support for each of these releases. So if you install Ubuntu 18.10, you probably need to upgrade to Ubuntu 19.04 next April, and then to Ubuntu 19.10 next October, and then to the next LTS, which will be 20.04 in April of 2020. So that is something to keep in mind. Most Ubuntu users, at least most Ubuntu desktop users, stick to LTS releases because you get longer support. You install 18.04, you don't really need to upgrade to anything until 20.04, and really you could wait till 22.04 because you're really offered 5 years of support, up to 5 years support on the LTSs. Reading a little bit of the release announcement, so this was from Adam Conrad at Ubuntu.com. Codenamed Cosmic Cuttlefish 18.10 continues Ubuntu's proud tradition of integrating the latest and greatest open source technologies, yada yada yada. Anyway, we're going to have the 4.18 kernel, we're going to have GCC 8.2, glibc 2.28, upgrading OpenSSL to 1.1.1, the GNU utils 3.6.4, Firefox 63, LibreOffice 6.1.2, and of course the GNOME desktop will be GNOME 3.30. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at Ubuntu 18.10 Cosmic Cuttlefish in a VM. Alright, so I've created a virtual machine here in VirtualBox. I gave this VM 4 gigs of RAM, gave this VM 2 cores of my 6-core CPU. What I typically give these VMs. These days, I typically always give these VMs 2 cores of my CPU and 4 gigs of RAM, just for consistency. That way, if some of them, act like they're struggling a little bit more than others in a VM, I can at least say that I give them all, the same amount of system resources. All right, and looks like the live environment has loaded up. Now we have the options here in the Ubiquiti installer to try Ubuntu, just to play around in the live environment, or we can install Ubuntu. I'm going to run through the install really quick. Many of you that have watched the channel have seen so many Ubuntu installs, but this is especially good for those new to Linux users to watch me do this. It's very easy. That first screen was just choosing language. English US was already chosen for me. All I had to do was click continue. This screen here, what apps would you like to install? So we have the option of a normal installation, which comes with the full suite of apps, a web browser, Office software, media player, other utilities. That's the one I would suggest, especially to new users. There is a minimal installation, which only includes the web browser and a few basic utilities, but things like the Office suite and multimedia stuff may not be installed by default because they assume that advanced users are going to choose the programs that they want to run. So they just give you some very basic stuff with the minimal install. I'm going to choose the normal install. We also have the option of downloading updates while installing Ubuntu. This thing was just released. There may or may not be any updates, but I'll leave that ticked on. And then install third-party software for graphics, Wi-Fi hardware, additional media formats. Again, this is one you always need to tick on. For like 99% of us that are using desktop Linux, you need to tick that on, especially you newer users. This will give you your proprietary video drivers. Say, for example, I use an NVIDIA graphics card. This installs the proprietary NVIDIA drivers, gives me better performance out of my video card, so I need to tick that on. If I was on a laptop, it would also give me my Wi-Fi drivers if they were proprietary. This also gives you your multimedia codecs for, things like multimedia, watching video, Blu-ray, DVD, that sort of thing. So make sure you tick this on, click continue, and we wait a second. Alright, and then this screen here is the most important one. Your computer has no detected operating system. What would you like to do? So this VM I created, there's nothing already installed on the hard drive in this VM, so I have the option here of just erase the whole disk, format the whole drive, and install Ubuntu. Now, those of you that want to dual boot alongside another operating system, such as Windows, you would have to do something else. Those of you that want to manually partition your drives, you could go down here and choose something else and manually partition the drive. If Ubuntu is the only thing you're installing on that machine, on that particular drive, the first option is the one you need. Just erase disk and give Ubuntu the whole disk, and it will automatically partition the drive for you. So click install now. Then we get a warning. It's about to format the drive and write to the disk. Click continue. And it will format the drive, in this case my virtual hard drive that I created in this virtual machine. Alright. Time zone. It has correctly chosen the central time zone in the US for me, so all I need to do is click continue. And then we need to create our username and password. I'm going to call my username DT. And we need to create a password for the DT user. I'm going to create a strong and complicated password for security reasons. And then we have the option of logging in automatically, no password required, or require a password to log into your computer. I like having require my password to log in ticked on. I like being asked for a password to log into my computer for privacy reasons. Click continue, and away we go. The installer will run for about 5 to 10 minutes on my machine. A very quick installation. You'll get a little slideshow that will automatically cycle through. If you want to manually cycle through the slides, just click the arrows here, and we'll tell you a little bit more about the Ubuntu operating system. I'm going to pause the video and let the installation complete. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Alright, and the installation completed. That took about 5 or 6 minutes for the install. So very fast installer, very easy. Assuming you don't have to do any kind of manual partitioning, most of us probably don't need to do that. You click OK 3 or 4 times in the installer, you create a username and password, and you're done probably on most machines 10 minutes. So the Ubuntu install is famous for being quick and easy. That is really what started Ubuntu, their rise, is because when they started doing this, back in 2004, Linux installs were not this easy. Since then, it's gotten even better, more refined. Now, to complete installation, you need to click this button here in this pop-up that says Restart Now, and it will reboot your machine. That's what I'm going to do right now. Alright, so I rebooted my freshly installed Ubuntu 18.10 Cosmic Cuttlefish. Let's see how long it takes for boot up. Ubuntu, of course, uses the systemd init system, and Ubuntu has always been pretty famous for its boot times. Even before using systemd, back when it used the Upstart init system, boot up times were very fast, and again, it didn't take 10 seconds to get to a login manager here. My DT user has already been selected. It's the only user on the system other than root. And then it's asking me for my password to log in. Remember, in the installer, I told it I wanted to be required a password to log in. So we sign in here. And the GNOME desktop environment should load here in a few seconds. It's taking a little time to load, but again, this is a VM, so you got to keep that in mind. Also, this is the very first time we're logging into this. Sometimes that takes a little longer the very first time. Alright, so we have this little pop-up here, online accounts. So connect your online accounts. So we can connect to the Ubuntu single sign-on service. We can connect to various Google services, Nextcloud, some Microsoft services. I don't want to do any of that, so I'm going to skip that. But for those of you that, play around with some of the social media stuff and, syncing stuff, cloud services, there are options to connect to your favorite services there. Alright, help improve Ubuntu. Ubuntu can report information that helps developers improve it. This includes things like computer model, which software is installed, the approximate location you chose, which in my case it tells me I chose America/Chicago for a time zone. All it knows is the time zone I'm in. It really doesn't track an IP. It really doesn't know my location. Because, quite frankly, I am nowhere near Chicago for my location. So, would I like to send this system information to Canonical, or no, don't send it? I don't mind sending them this information. This is not private information. What this just told them, when I hit the next button, it sent them information about the machine. In my case, a VM, a virtual machine, which they want to know, how many of us actually test things out in a VM, so it's good they know that. They also get information about screen resolution, so they know I'm using 19 by 1080 screen resolution. If this was on physical hardware, they'd know what my GPU, my CPU were, that sort of thing. So no personal information. They're not scanning your system for files or anything. The only thing reasonably personal that they know, again, they know the time zone you're in, but they don't know any kind of IPs or anything. They just know the time zone you're in. So I don't mind sending them that information if it helps them out, if it helps them build a better Ubuntu, a better product. So you're ready to go. You can install, or you can use software to install apps like these. So these are not installed, but if we click on them, we can get them installed. We can get a VLC, Skype, Spotify, Slack, Discord, Telegram, and a million other things installed. So actually just clicking on them doesn't do. You have to go down here and click. Oh, I guess it does do. Yeah. So it took me straight to the VLC page in the Software Center. I click install, and if I enter my password, it will install VLC, which is a fantastic multimedia player, probably the best one we have. I'm not going to take the time to do that on camera, but that is really neat that they include this screen on the first startup here. You can get, because I think most people probably would like VLC as their media player, other than what might be installed by default here. Skype, I don't use Skype. Spotify, I know a lot of you guys use Spotify. It's a very popular music program now. Discord, I do use Discord. That's handy that they include a quick link to that. So I'm going to click done here and close out that initial greeter, basically a helper program to help you get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the menu and I'm going to see what is installed by default on Ubuntu 18.10 Cosmic Cuttlefish. Now, we did the normal installation, so it is a full suite of apps. But when I say a full suite of apps, the Ubuntu images are not big images. They try to keep things to like a 1 gig ISO size. They kind of set that as their goal. So this is not going to be some bloated distro with a ton of programs installed, but it should have enough of the programs for most everybody for daily use. So going through, we have Owl Riot Solitaire for a game. This is just your standard solitaire card game. We have a link to Amazon. So that is interesting. Of course, that is probably just going to open up Amazon in our web browser. It says we had a crash report. Not from the web browser opening, but that was from me clicking all of those icons, for installing software earlier. I clicked on like 3 or 4 of them because I didn't realize they did anything. I thought they didn't, do anything just clicking on them, so I probably crashed the software application. Anyway, the Amazon icon is basically just a link to the Amazon website here in Firefox. We have a Firefox privacy notice the very first time you open Firefox. Go to Help and About Firefox. We see this is Firefox Quantum 63.0, so very recent version of Firefox. And of course, the reason Ubuntu, Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu, has this Amazon link in the applications. Of course, it is an affiliate link. They get a little money for those of you that shop on Amazon. If you want to click this link to do your shopping, Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu, does make a few cents off of it. Not much of anything, really. Matter of fact, it annoys a lot of Ubuntu users that Canonical still puts this here. But I don't mind it too much. If you use it, great. If you don't use it, you can remove it. So we also have a calculator program here. I believe they're using the GNOME calculator still here in Ubuntu. Of course, this is the GNOME desktop environment, so most of the utilities they use will be GNOME utilities. And wow, the calculator program is taking forever to load up here. And then it never loaded. Wonder what that was about. It may eventually load up. Anyway, let's see if the calendar launches. The calendar launches, no problem. Okay. Really neat calendar. So we're on the 19th. If I wanted to go back to the 18th and mention that the 18th was Ubuntu release. Edit. Yep, and we got it in our calendar. And we could play around with some other stuff here. Repeat daily. Really neat little calendar program. Let me close that out. Oh, by the way, the calculator finally loaded. I'm surprised that the calculator took that long to load. We go to advanced mode for more of a scientific calculator. You could do that. Not sure why the calculator took so long to load. That was GNOME calculator, I'm assuming, too. So, Cheese is our webcam program. Launching Cheese won't do anything because I don't have a webcam connected to the VM. Plus, I'm also already using my camera, recording this video, so I couldn't use that and also stream into the Cheese webcam program. But ideally, what would happen is you open this, and if you go to video, you would see my face talking right here in Cheese for a webcam program. Cheese is a nice program. Oh, I went to activities. I wanted to go down here. All right. So we have our document viewer. The document viewer is for viewing PDF files. We have files. Files is the name of the file manager. Well, not really. The name of the file manager in GNOME is Nautilus, but the GNOME devs like to rename everything in the menu system, these very generic sounding names. They think it's better for new users rather than having Nautilus as the name of a program. Labeling something files tells a brand new user, yeah, this is a file manager. So we have options like show hidden files here, show all our hidden dot files. I wonder what version of Nautilus this is. Would it give me any kind of about information? I think I have to go up here to the menu here, go to about, files 3.26.4, access and organize your files. Anyway, the Nautilus file manager. Not a horrible file manager. Ubuntu also tends to ship with older versions of Nautilus than the latest ones because they, for example, you guys probably notice I have icon on the desktop by default, the trash icon. That is handled by the Nautilus file manager, but you have to use one of the older versions of Nautilus to do that because they've removed that feature in the newer versions of Nautilus. On Firefox, of course, we've already seen Firefox 63. We have some system preferences stuff like input and language we'll get to later. LibreOffice, they included 3 LibreOffice programs, actually 4. Calc, Draw, Impress, and Writer. If I open up LibreOffice Writer, you'll see it's on a very recent version of LibreOffice. I go to the Help tab here, About LibreOffice 6.1.2.1. And close that out. Going through the installed applications. A little further, we have a couple of more games. Mahjong and Mines are installed. Power Stats. Remina is for remote desktop. Rhythmbox is GNOME's audio player. Really fantastic music player. Rhythmbox is one of the best GNOME applications in my opinion. Rhythmbox. I don't have, of course, any music to play you on the VM because there's nothing, files installed here. Rhythmbox 3.4.2. Even if I had some music, I'd have to be careful what I played on video on YouTube. Anyway, we have our settings manager here. So we'll come back to the settings manager here in a bit and play around in that. Shotwell for our image viewer. Really a photo manager is really what Shotwell is. For those of you that are into photography, this is a good little program to manage your photographs. We have Simple Scan for scanning. I don't have a scanner attached to this, but Simple Scan's a pretty simple and easy to use tool. And on Linux, you usually don't have to worry about things like printer drivers and scanner drivers if you buy the right kind of equipment. I will warn you guys, typically HP products are great. So if you're wanting to make the move full time to Linux, learn to love HP. HP printers are fantastic printers anyway, and they are always going to work on Linux. So we have a software and update tool here. And basically what this would do is update our system. Would also give us our proprietary drivers. If I click this additional drivers, now our proprietary drivers were already installed during the installation process. Remember I ticked that box on that said install third-party software. Well, if I hadn't ticked that box on, I could still get those with this tab here. I'm not going to click on it because it's going to take a couple of minutes to sync the repos and try to download those drivers I've already got. We could also go to other software and add additional repositories and PPAs and that sort of thing. All right, I'm going through the list of software, startup applications. So this would list like all the applications that start up by default when you log into Ubuntu. So by default, we've got some Snap stuff running in the background and SSH. And we have Sudoku for another game. We have System Monitor. This is the GNOME System Monitor. Let's check out system resource usage. Now, the GNOME devs know they've had some problems in recent releases with especially memory usage, RAM usage. They've worked very hard to solve some of those problems. So this will be interesting to see what the memory usage is like if the System Monitor ever loads. This is the same problem I had with the GNOME calculator. So the GNOME System Monitor too. It's taking forever to open up, but it did finally open up. Again, this is a VM, so this is not on physical hardware. CPU usage is high, very high for what we're doing. Nearly 30% of both cores of CPU. Memory is also a little high, 1.1 gigs. That's typical for GNOME, recent versions of GNOME. So you're usually pushing about a gig of RAM. So nothing that unusual, to be honest, with GNOME there. So going back through the menu system, our plain text editor here. This, of course, is GNOME's plain text editor called gedit, gedit 3.30.1. gedit is a small and lightweight text editor for the GNOME desktop. Really nice. Of course, to get the about information, I have to click this top menu here, and then you have about, help, quit here. But you also have a menu system in the app itself with different options in this menu. Why do you have two different menus? This is one of my problems with GNOME as a desktop environment is, this is confusing. And the GNOME devs do know this is confusing. I think they're working on getting rid of one of these menus and putting everything in just one menu system. I think they're going to get rid of the top menu and just put everything in the app menu itself, which makes sense to me. Back to the programs installed by default. Thunderbird is here for our email client. We have a to-do list. This would be GNOME's to-do app. If I go to About, to-do 3.28.1. And never actually played around with the GNOME to-do utility. Me, personally, I don't use to-do apps, organizers or anything. I'm sure it's a fine application. We have transmission for the BitTorrent client. I won't agree to whatever I need to agree to use to it because I'm not actually going to download anything. But transmission is a fine BitTorrent client. I actually am using it on my main production machine, which is a Manjaro i3 installation. Ubuntu software we've seen. I may come back to the software center again, but earlier when I tried to install VLC, or I just declined installing VLC, but that was the Ubuntu software center that opened up. We have a utility subcategory. We have our archive manager for zip, unzip, tar-gz, those sorts of compressed file formats. We have a backup utility. This is Deja Dupe, really nice backup tool. I click backup now, and it's, well, I need to install some dependencies, and it gives me the name of the dependency I need to install. It even has a button here for installing that dependency. Very nice. I'm not going to do that on camera, but you get your dependency install, and it's pretty simple taking a backup snapshot of your system. Also under the utility subcategory, we have a character map, disk usage analyzer, the GNOME disk utility, fonts, help, image viewer, logs, passwords and keys, screenshot utility, and the terminal. This is the GNOME terminal. GNOME terminal 3.30.1. And we have a warning here in the terminal. To run a command as administrator, the root user, use sudo. And for more information, of course, you can man sudo root. Also, while I've got the terminal open, uname space -r gives us the kernel version 4.18, which is what the release notes told us this should be. Now I'm going to do a quick reboot of the system, and I'm going to check system resource usage one more time on a fresh reboot. Alright, so I rebooted the machine one more time. This time what I'm doing is, because I've opened up so many applications, not sure what's running in the background. So now I'm going to go back to the system monitor one more time, if I can find the system monitor. Let's see. And now we've opened nothing, no programs, other than the system monitor itself, of course. Yeah, CPU is still high, 26, 25%, 31%, yeah, so there's that. But memory did drop down quite a bit. 800 megs of memory of the 4 gigs of RAM that I gave this VM. That's actually pretty respectable. That's not bad for GNOME. For GNOME is kind of a heavier desktop environment, that is. So that is a lot better. You open up the Software Center one more time. Now that we've rebooted, let's see. This is the GNOME Software Center. Should show us like some top app picks, Skype, Spotify, Discord again. Again, you just click on one of them. If I wanted to install Discord, I click on it. Got the install button here. I just click on it and away it goes. It'll ask me for a root password. You always have to enter a root password to install or remove software anytime you make changes to your system. It gives me details. It tells me that this is a stable version of Discord. If it was a alpha or a beta, it would tell me it was beta. Alright, version, tells me version number, tells me the license. This is proprietary software. Discord is not free and open source. But if it was licensed under something like the GPL, for example, it would tell me that. Also tells me that this is from the Snap Store. So this is installing as a snap. So it gives me plenty of information here. Close that out. I'm going to right click on the desktop. I'm going to choose Change Background. Now I really like the default wallpaper, the Cuttlefish wallpaper, but if I wanted to change it, simply click on changing the background here. And mainline Ubuntu always comes with just some gorgeous wallpapers. So we have options like this blue wallpaper here if I select it. That's interesting. A little bit too busy for my taste. This one here. Yeah, that's pretty classy right there. Go back to backgrounds, play around with a few more. Here's a picture of an actual cuttlefish. Interesting. I'm not sure if I like that particular picture or not. Let me pick something. How about this? With the Ubuntu, looks like poker chips, basically, with Ubuntu carved in them. Yeah, that's interesting. And one more. How about this dark blue one? Not exactly sure what's going on there. Can I minimize that window? Some kind of abstract art. Some kind of space image. Actually, in the night sky here. close that out. Yeah, that's a classy picture too. If I wanted to go to the system settings, so let me show applications. Go to system. Where is it in here? I think it's in the utilities subcategory. Well, you know what? I can search for it by typing system. The settings. It's what they call it in the menu system. So they just call it settings. And we have about information, removable media. I go to about. It'll tell me a little bit more about the machine, in this case my virtual machine, and tells me the version of GNOME we're on, 3.30.1. But that is not what I was trying to get to. Where is the settings manager? Settings. Okay, now I get different information in the that's still the settings program, but now I've got a few more things I can change, like the date and time is here. This wasn't here the previous time I opened it. Users, I can add, remove users. Default applications, so my default web browser is set to Firefox. If I installed Chrome or Vivaldi or other web browsers, I could change the default web browser to one of those. Same thing with setting default email client, calendar, music player, video player, and your image viewer. One thing I will mention about GNOME is at least Ubuntu's version of GNOME. It is actually quite attractive. I love the GTK theme they're using. I believe this, in the 1804 release, they had something called the Community theme, a community theme that they were working on to replace the older Ubuntu themes, which were Radiance and Ambience. This Community theme has become the default now. Now they've changed the name to Yaru. Y-A-R-U, I think, is the name of this particular GTK theme, and it's beautiful. They also now have a new icon set. This is Suru. I think they started using Suru in the previous release, the LTS release, 1804. But yeah, it's just gorgeous. I mean, everything about Ubuntu, for the most part, their mainline edition anyway, is always very clean, very professional, very polished. Even like, the panel here with the transparency is nice. The menus here, really nice. They've actually got some pseudo transparency. You can't really make it out probably on the video because I'm using such a dark background that the slight transparency to these notifications doesn't show. Let me change to a lighter background and it will be a little more obvious that there's some transparency going on there. So maybe this nature picture here. And now, if I open up the calendar, I don't know if you guys can see, there's just a slight transparency. You see the horizon here with the mountains? Subtle effect, but nice. So, all in all, what are my initial, thoughts, first impressions of Ubuntu 18.10 Cosmic Cuttlefish? Solid release. Solid release. Every Ubuntu release, really, that I've ever used has been solid, with a couple of notable exceptions. I was around with the very first Unity Ubuntu release, which was 11.04. That thing was very buggy, but that was major change. They were switching from the GNOME 2 desktop environment to Unity, and there were big changes from GTK 2 to GTK 3, around that time, and that was very much more like alpha software. But for the most part, Ubuntu is always rock solid, stable. It just works. Everything most desktop users need out of the box. Full suite of applications, but not terribly bloated. Again, the ISO size is around 1 gig. Very easy installation. The install, you click OK 3 or 4 times. You're done in about 10 minutes. Installing things like your proprietary graphics drivers and Wi-Fi drivers and multimedia codecs is a breeze. You just tick that box in the installer. If for some reason you forgot to tick that box in the installer, you just go to the software sources program somewhere in here. I think it was under utilities. No. I could search for it. But software and updates is the name of it. So, and then you just click this additional drivers tab and it installs all that stuff for you if you forgot to do it during the install. So Ubuntu, great for the new to Linux user, but not just the new to Linux user, even advanced users. I'm more of an advanced user. I'm a tinkerer. I like to play with my Linux distros, sometimes break them on purpose so I can fix it. Advanced users are perfectly fine using Ubuntu. I would have no problem running Ubuntu 18.10 on my main production machine. I could live in Ubuntu happily ever after if this was the only Linux distro at all. But where Ubuntu really shines is converting people over from Windows and Mac. Ubuntu is really responsible for getting so many people interested in desktop Linux. So I do have to give the folks at Ubuntu that worked on this and the company behind it, Canonical, big props. Overall, Ubuntu 18.10 Cosmic Cuttlefish gets an A from me. Before I go, I do need to thank my supporters. This show was made possible by Ansem, Carlos, David, Leor, and Rob. They are my highest tiered patrons. They are the producers of the show. Without them, this show would not be possible. It's also brought to you by the fine ladies and gentlemen. You see their names on the screen. They are my Patreon supporters. Again, without them, this show would not be possible. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting the channel. You will find me at DistroTube over on Patreon. Peace, guys.